Finally, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Sandra Hall. I'm a DEVA board member, and I'm here to sort of facilitate and run the technology in the background while we have Richard Bode, who is going to be running the meeting as a whole and introducing our presenters. So thank you all for joining us. Richard, I guess I'll pass it off to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sandra, for the introduction. And we got a couple of changes in our agenda today, which is good. We got some great extra speakers. So first off, are you going to put the slide up, the little agenda slide?
Yes.
So I think we kind of did our welcome already. And if you just joined, remember to put your name and your EV you have or the EV you want to have. Now, if you have an EV, the next EV you want to get. So from there, well, I think we're just going to jump in. So we added a couple of speakers tonight. It was good. And I'm going to let Ed Pike actually is going to talk first. Luckily we got him from the California Public Utilities Commission. And Ed, I forgot to ask you, did you have any slides you wanted to put up or just going to talk? Or are you there?
I do not have, I don't have any slides.
Okay, great. Then with that, go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for the invitation to speak. My name is Ed Pike with the California Public Utilities Commission. Formerly, I've worked at a nonprofit for consulting, and I've been working in the EV field since about 2008. And just wanted to give a quick overview of what the PUC is doing regarding vehicle grid integration. And there's a lot going on in this space. There's a lot of work to be done. So first, I'll just give a quick overview of some background around a decision that the commission issued related to vehicle grid integration. I won't go into all the details. I'll chat out a link so folks can look at the specifics if you want to. But in December of last year, the California Public Utilities Commission issued a decision regarding vehicle grid integration and implementation of Senate Bill 676, which set certain criteria for implementing VGI. And in that decision, we built on a work group that had issued a report in June of last year, and then had issued a draft staff paper for anyone who is interested to comment on. And then the commission issued a draft and then a final decision by the end of last year. And it's really kind of intended to be a foundation. It's certainly not a finished house, I would say, because we're really at the beginning of a process. We're sort of in the early days of a process, and our goal is to maximize vehicle grid integration by 2030, which I think makes sense because there's so much to be done and so much to be figured out. And so the commission adopted a decision that set out a number of policy areas, set out a number of general strategies, like what is the decision of vehicle grid integration? And then general strategies like the utilities should be facilitating vehicles and export to buildings, should be supporting, compensating EV drivers and fleet owners that export power from vehicles to the grid. We should be streamlining standards for interconnection for vehicles that can export to the grid so that they can get a permit to actually set up and operate. So there are a number of kind of high level strategies. And then the decision also had a number of more specific action items like VGI pilots, emerging technology program, which kind of sits before something's ready to go out into the real world as a pilot. Certain steps are often helpful to determine, is it viable? Is it going to work? Is it something customers could actually use or would be wanting to use? And also there's a certain technology to manage load, reduce costs, provide more flexibility. So in addition to these kind of general strategies, the decision also had a number of specific action items for the California investor-owned utilities, also some for the CCAs, none for SMUD because we do not have jurisdiction over SMUD. So fast forward to today, and we have made a lot of progress. We've had a number of workshops on a bunch of different topics related to vehicle grid integration. And we now have in-house a number of proposals for VGI pilots from PG&E and Southern California Edison. SCG&E had put forward a proposal, but it got rather poor feedback, and so they decided not to submit it, fortunately. So there's an interesting collection of pilots that have been submitted. They're all public. All the comments are public. Like the SCE response to the comments, or it's all public information. It's all available to anyone who's interested to take a look. Can help point you to that. And so now the commission is in the role of making a decision on these VGI pilots. And it's interesting because the pilots, like the different utilities have like specific focus areas, where PG&E was much more focused on vehicles that export to the grid, both passenger vehicles, commercial vehicles, but so someone could keep the lights on in their house if they live in PG&E service territory and they get blacked out, as well as also exporting power back to the grid if there's a segment that gets isolated because some piece of the distribution grid upstream needs to be shut off for a public safety event. That downstream segment, if there's enough EVs to put power back on the grid, could be re-energized, or could be energized potentially based on kind of all the individual vehicles that are on that segment that could export power back to the grid. So you might be able to keep a neighborhood energized because of EVs that can export to the grid. Whereas other segments without that resource might go completely dark. So PG&E had a number of ways about how to leverage vehicles that can export, which probably everyone on this call knows those vehicles are very rare. I'm sure everyone's heard of the upcoming plans for the Ford Lightning. If you're like me and you have the Nissan Leaf, you could export to the grid now if you had the right charger. And a number of companies have said they are making those chargers. There's some that are being deployed right now in California for school buses, not for passenger vehicles yet, but this PG&E pilot would change that to help push the technology out into the market, help customers learn about it, figure out, should the utilities have an incentive program? How can they pay for the services when a customer puts power back onto the grid when it's needed? So there's some rather ambitious goals from the PG&E pilot. And actually, let me just pause for just a moment before I get into the details of all of these pilots. But just, are there any questions kind of like in general about what the commission does, what the California Public Utilities Commission does, and what's sort of this general policy background related to vehicle grid integration, or why do we care about VGI? Let's just pause a bit to see if people have general questions.
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a manufacturer or vehicle standard for vehicle grid to enable that?
So that's a really good question. I think part of that is that it goes to the charging ports.
Right.
So like there are chargers that could plug into, I have the CHAdeMO port of my car, but they would not work for Tesla, for instance. I think that's a smaller barrier probably. If Tesla wanted to do vehicle to grid, I'm sure they could figure out how to like connect the charger. But there are, in some cases, communication standards that, like CHAdeMO, it's fully baked in Boulder, Colorado, where my sister lives. If I were to drive all the way out there, which is not really practical to me, but I could go to a community center, I could plug in the car and put power back onto the grid right now, or into a community center. But in some cases, the standards for communication are not fully baked. If you're familiar with ISO 15118, the vehicle to grid section is not fully developed. So for instance, my understanding is Nuvve had to come up with their own code in order to do bidirectional charging with school buses. So I think the standards are not necessarily a barrier right now, but they're not fully baked for the charging through the DC port. And for exporting power from the AC port, the standards are not there yet. They're underway. And the commission has established a pathway for if somebody wants to try AC charging, like they can do that without having the full standard set up with all the safety requirements. But there's essentially like what I'll call a fancy disconnect, like on the outside of my house, it's old school. So there's literally a switch. You know, if somebody needs to disconnect my solar system from exporting to the grid, you literally pull a switch on the outside of my house. This would be a little more fancy. But if someone wants to do AC interconnection through the level 2 port and export power, then they have to have what's called an automatic relay. So if something goes wrong, the system will be disconnected from the grid until we can get the AC standards for interconnection worked out. So I know that's kind of a long answer, but does that answer your question?
Yeah, it seemed, well, certainly it answers. It's not simple is what I got out of it. It's not complete. I got that out of it. And it kind of begs the question of like, you know, since a standard isn't fully developed, that, you know, some standards body, you know, would certainly publish that. Maybe that's that number you just listed. Mm-hmm. And then the first adoption of this, it seems, would be something like what you mentioned earlier, which is like, you know, if you have a bus that's part of a school district or part of a community, right? If it's a bus for the county, that could be a good source for augmenting the grid for those, you know, tough times where we need that extra power. That would be seemingly the lower hanging fruit versus, you know, all the iterations that would be required for a homeowner to be able to facilitate that, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because for a school bus, it uses the CHAdeMO port for the buses that are implemented right now, and in the future, the CCS plug, you know, there needs to be a standard written so that it can support export of power back to the grid also. But for school buses, they're actually using the CHAdeMO port, so I think it would be. I don't know if I could use the exact same charger that the school buses are using right now, but perhaps it would be the same for my use as a residential customer. And there's like a number of companies who've said they plan to enter the market very soon with a residential charger. So, you know, you're mentioning some challenges for residential vehicles to export power back to the grid. But for vehicles that have a DC charging port, it seems like for CHAdeMO, that's done now, and the product are coming soon. And then, you know, Ford thinks they have a solution for the Ford Lightning.
Right. Rivian's talked about it. You know, at least they have vehicle to vehicle, so they would imagine that vehicle to grid would be very easy.
So, yeah. So we have another question to jump through also, because I want us to give time to everybody if possible. So I'm going to have us jump to another question, since that's a circular question we just answered. Peter?
Yeah, so I have a non-technical, it's more of a legal liability question. So when you're feeding, like if you're powering your own house through your car, that's no issue because you're disconnected from the grid. So, you know, if you fry something, it's your fault. But if you're powering your distribution system under say a PSPS, where a section of the distribution system is disconnected and you and your neighbors are powering that section of the distribution system, who's liable for problems? Is it PG&E or is it the pusher, you know, the seller of the power? I think that's a question that has to be worked out, because I know at this point PG&E absolutely positively will not let a third party provide power to the grid in an islanding situation. They force you to disconnect, because I've had clients that have asked about that and they said nope, absolutely not.
Yeah, and a customer that goes through the Rule 21 interconnection process, they have to jump through hoops to show that there's standards and technology that if the power coming back onto the grid is not what the utility is expecting, that that there'll be a disconnection from the grid. And for the DC charging ports, those requirements under Rule 21 have been established by the commission. There's a standard process. So you buy the charger, you check the box, and then you're allowed to interconnect with the utility grid. And all of the protections are built into the charger or the vehicle. Right now, they're pretty much all on the charger. In the future, maybe some of those protections will be on the vehicle, that the vehicle will be responsible for safety. But so in terms of like legal liability, like what if, I don't know, somehow there's some unanticipated issue, I don't know where that would fall. But the standards are supposed to avoid safety, are designed and approved in order to assure like a safe transfer of power between the customer and the grid when they are putting power back on the grid.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I just wanted to ask that question because, you know, it's not just technical issues that have to be dealt with.
Yeah, right. And the issue of like switching between islanding and export, I think there's some additional complexity there. It's my understanding.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So
Sure.
I just wanted to do a little time check here because Corey UK is going to talk next. I think has to leave at 6:45. And Ed, how much more we're going to go into next? Maybe hold back your questions a bit.
Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't have a whole lot more that I wanted to go into. I had a little bit more I could share about the pilots, but I think really, you know, just happy to provide whatever information is most useful to folks in the meeting.
Okay. Well, then might as well open up, you know, a couple more questions here. You've got them.
Or if you have those couple highlights, you're welcome to go that maybe until the 23, until 6:23.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit more about the Southern California Edison pilots, and they have a little bit of a different focus.
Ed, this guy, I'm wondering, you know, these folks are in PG&E areas. Is there something that might be interesting coming from PG&E in terms of pilot?
I would say definitely keep an eye out for the residential vehicle to grid pilots or vehicle to building, vehicle to grid pilots. PG&E's proposed the first phase would be just to keep the home energized, and then phase 2, they'd be looking for customers to put power back onto the grid. This is just a proposal. The commission has taken no action, but this could potentially go pretty fast given that you know, the reliability is a key priority for the commission and for everyone, you know, especially in areas where if you're experiencing power shutoffs due to safety conditions, you know, due to wildfire risk, then, you know, obviously the commission wants to, first of all, fix the grid to avoid that. But then second of all, you know, obviously, if there's a way to help individual customers who unfortunately, you know, are at risk of getting their power shut off, and I would say that's a priority for the commission. I mean, I'm not speaking today on behalf of the commission. I'm just giving you my own opinion, but I think it's pretty well established in commission decisions. So that would be one thing to look out for.
And in terms of you mentioned it could happen pretty quick. What is quick in terms of CPUC?
Well, just to give you some relative sense of the time frame. So the decision was issued in December. The utility proposals came in July, which I think is, I really, some people might think that's pretty slow, but that's pretty quick for a regulator. So the approval process, you know, we don't have a defined timeline on that right now in terms of reviewing and approving, or if we needed to do not approve the PG&E pilots. But I think getting a decision out the door in 6 months from like when we got the VGI work group reports, getting a final decision, it does show that the commission, you know, this is a priority for the commission to move ahead on VGI. We don't want ideas to sit on the shelf or go stale. Were there any other questions about the PG&E pilots?
you know any more? Can you outline what the BG&E pilot looks like? As it's, you mentioned vehicle to home as the first phase.
Yeah.
Any more definitive what that means, or?
Well, yeah. So let's talk a little more about the first PG&E pilot, which is focused on residential customers. And so in the first phase, they want to sign up at least 100 customers. And I think, depending on how the Lightning does, there might be a lot more than 100 customers who can export to the grid. But over the first year, they do want to have a more limited scale, and they want to focus on putting power back into people's homes, so that, if they're getting shut off by PG&E, that they can at least keep the lights on at home. And then they would, in year 2, they would expand, and they would continue to prioritize keeping the lights on, the vehicle to building use case, for everyone who enrolled in phase 1 and everyone who comes in during phase 2. But then they would expand the scope to putting power back onto the grid, and like, what are the opportunities to do that? What's the potential value? They would pay incentive. They've proposed to pay incentives. So there would be an upfront incentive to pay for part of the cost of the technology, and then there would be a participation incentive where if someone's, providing value to the grid by exporting power, they would get an incentive for that. And then, PG&E would be reporting on progress and lessons learned, what worked, what didn't, what could be scaled up.
Since I think the only vehicle capable of doing that today is the Leaf. Is this a pilot that would only be Leaf people, or there's some other new vehicles that are coming down the pike that might participate in this?
Well, I mean, the Leaf is, I'm just looking at the sales numbers. I mean, that doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot more of those vehicles hitting the market. So we've got, a certain tens of thousands of those on the road in California. And then when the Ford Lightning comes on, maybe that will nudge other manufacturers as well to start baking this capability into their products. What I hear informally from automakers is it's not a technical issue. I mean, there's some amount of effort needed, but it's something that the automakers can do if they see a reason to do it. And so, like, if the Lightning takes off, then they'll probably feel like there's a good reason to do it, and we'll see a lot more vehicles with this capability.
And VW said they were planning to go forward in that direction as well, but I didn't hear specifics.
Yeah. So, I'm hopeful more manufacturers will go that way, but we just don't have commitments from the manufacturers to do it. But I'm sure that, if the Lightning takes off and it gives them a competitive advantage, then other OEMs are going to want to follow suit. And then hopefully also the pilot will kind of break this chicken and the egg of, well, we don't see the chargers in the market, so there's not a lot of momentum. There's not customer awareness. And hopefully through this pilot, it will kind of generate some momentum, figure out some policy changes so customers actually can get paid for exporting power back to the grid. Provide some examples of what will motivate customers to put power back on the grid, and what type of value they may derive from that, and then put the policies in place to actually pay them for useful services to the grid. So long way of saying we don't know, but hopefully there will be a lot of momentum for automakers to start baking this capability into their product plans.
So just to wrap that up, thank you so much. If somebody was interested in signing up for the pilot, could they do that? And how would they do that?
They could not sign up today, but once the pilot is approved, then I think PG&E they'll need a little time to stand up the program. And I'm not sure exactly what their customer enrollment strategy will be. I don't know if they're going to have their own website or work through manufacturers. But certainly I think anyone who's interested should definitely keep an eye out for opportunities to sign up. First phase will be maybe as few as 100, and then expand to 1,000 or more after that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we can definitely stay in touch, so you can pass along information to your members.
Yeah, that would be
assuming
wonderful.
there is an opportunity to sign up.
Good. That'd be nice to send us that.
Sure.
I think we're just about out of time here. So if we have any more questions for Ed, maybe we can maybe reel in to Guy, and Guy can help us follow through if we have anything else. But thanks, Ed, for joining us.
Okay, thanks for the invite.
Good. And with that, I'm going to have Creed Kate talk about the new BMW e-Mini. Creed, do you have any slides or video you wanted to share?
You know, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I can share my screen here. I've actually sold minis since 2008 at this location. If somebody can stop screen sharing so I can start screen sharing, I'll just show you. There you go. Thank you. I'm a big fan of the cars. The customers that I've sold them to, I've followed up with them since 2020, and they're very happy with the cars. As you can see, the cars have low prices. It's the lowest priced vehicle on the market. Of course, it has a range to go with it. It's a small car, so they fit batteries from BMW's i3 that's been on sale since 2014, and motors from that vehicle, the i3S, in this car. So it's an adaptation from a BMW product into a Mini. It's got great figures with DC fast charging, quick charging at 0% apparently to 80% at 36 minutes. Of course, we know we're not going to pull into a charger at 0%, but I can tell you the car's got a lot of features standard from navigation with charge points that'll present themselves. You can guide yourself to them, of course. It'll indicate a range, how far you can drive on the current charge. It does cover some rebates and some incentives from the federal government and the state. We do still qualify for $7,500 up to, depending on your tax situation, from the federal government, $2,000 from the state of California, another $1,500 from California Air Resources Board. I've probably sold the most at this store. I'm very excited about the product. I can easily see myself having one. The range, I think, if most people really think about how far they drive daily, I think this is more than enough range with 110 miles of range of just pure highway driving. And it has a hard, the term Mini uses high brake regeneration or hard regeneration. So it has one pedal driving where it can regenerate a lot of energy from not powering the motor and the momentum of the car going forward. I've personally driven 150 miles on a full charge in this car. Minis are go-karts. They really are go-karts. So if you want to have fun in a car and be zero emissions, you definitely should check one of these out. The only catch to getting one right now is you have to order it because they have been sold out for quite some time. Should I stop there? I've never presented on a Zoom platform before, nor this car. I've just do it in person with customers.
Could you go back to that slide you had on the screen, the LCD screen on the car?
Tell me when to stop.
Right there.
Okay.
That one. Oh, actually, the one above, I guess, is a close-up, right?
That one?
Yeah, and the one below. So that's the info
interior
screen. Yeah.
You got a nav screen here that comes standard on the car, touchable, and they have digital screens in front of the drivers. They have a lot of features standard for that $30,000 price point. My name's Creed, so if anybody ever wants to talk to me, you can just find Nilo Mini, the Sacramento store, and find me. They're pretty darn easy to sell. As long as you are okay with the small car, the back seat fits somebody like me that's almost 6 foot tall, as long as the person in front isn't 6 foot tall. You know, it isn't actually that small in the back seat, but it is small if you're trying to do a long trip. And obviously most people like bigger cars for longer drives. But these incentives are pretty impressive because BMW's also got a vehicle. Let's see if I can show you that one. An SUV coming that also qualifies for incentives, and I sell those as well. They're taking orders now. Sorry guys, this is my dog. My dog comes with me to work. Will you pet her? Sorry. There's a BMW coming out, an SUV as well as a sedan. Zoe, it's okay. So we've got more models from the BMW manufacturer. launching next year and minis that you can get now or order now. And I'm definitely a good resource for information on both brands right now.
Well, that's great. I actually hadn't heard of the E-mini before until Jim mentioned it to me. So
It's been out since 2020, and they started doing beta testing on that car in 2009. It was called the Mini E, just Mini E. It's called the Mini Cooper SE right now. BMW is launching this other vehicle, just so people know, a sedan, more traditional sedan. There you go, there's some images. BMW product is quite good, especially when you electrify it. They're not new to this. They did some beta testing. I think the earliest one was 2009, and it went well. And you know, the i3 has been on sale since 2014. That's a car that BMW's just now phasing out to launch their other product line. I'd be glad to answer any questions. I am expecting a customer to arrive shortly to purchase another vehicle.
We do have a question that came in the chat. Has BMW teamed up with any EV charging brands to provide people with the car when purchasing?
No, not that I'm aware of, although you know, that could come. It seems to me that Electrify America has some of the best networks in my experience, and there's one right across the street, although, so no, the answer is no.
Creed, you know, interestingly enough, we've heard some discussion. I haven't heard specifics that BMW and PG&E are working on some sort of a vehicle grid related project.
I haven't heard about that.
Okay.
I'm probably one of the biggest nerds about cars at the store, reading blogs daily, although there's a lot of I don't read all of them, but I've spent a number of hours watching YouTube videos of people driving various ones, seeing how far they go, how's the experience using public DC fast chargers. But I haven't heard anything about PG&E and BMW and Mini teaming up yet, but they're a large company, so I could see how that could happen. They're just now launching, well, BMW's now launching their larger vehicles that would appeal to a larger audience too.
And we have meetings between the DEVAs and the Sacramento Center groups. We have meetings generally on the second Wednesday of every month, alternating back and forth. So at the Sacramento site, we started opening up our meetings again and outside to have a showcase of new cars. So if you're interested in bringing them out to show.
I would love to, although the trouble is the EV Mini, if I don't, every single car that we have in our pipeline inventory coming in is all sold. So that's better yet. Yeah.
What we'd like you to do is bring one of your customers out, let them show the car. That's what we like to hear.
Maybe one of
them show out their car and share their personal experience that actually rings and connects with people in a more effective way. So
I would suggest if any of you see somebody driving a Mini EV in Davis, knock on their window. Most Mini customers are very friendly. Ask them about the car and see if they'd mention that, because a lot of them would probably love to do that.
So yeah, so if you maybe reach out to any of the ones that you've sold to in the last 6 months or something too. And so I think, I don't know if you've signed up to the DEVA email list or the SacEV one. That would tell you at least when meetings are coming and when the opportunities are to show. And not just these, but also, you know, the BMW ones, as well as the, excuse me, this one that you're focusing on this afternoon.
And we have a question from Peter as well.
Yeah, it's not a question, it's a comment. I was just responding to Guy. The BMW and PG&E, they had a pilot. It was for charging regulation. It wasn't vehicle to grid. So it was basically regulating when the chargers would charge and how much they would charge to try to balance supply and demand, but it wasn't a send power back to the grid kind of thing.
That's still going on, Peter, do you know?
No, I think that's over. I think that was done a couple years ago. There's a report out. I don't know where it is, but there is a report available.
Never heard of a phase 2 or something going. Anyway, we'll
Maybe,
find
but
out.
I haven't heard that it's started. I just
Yeah.
don't know.
Cool. Well, we've, as I mentioned in the chat, PG&E is interested to come talk to one of our next upcoming meetings. So we'll have the opportunity to ask more.
Sure.
So Creed, have you sold any of the minis in Davis? The
Yes, I'm sure. I can't recall which customers live in Davis. But yes, Davis customers come to us. We're the only mini dealer within a 100-mile range of Sacramento. So I'm sure there's some customers in Davis driving these cars.
And if someone wanted to order one, how long does it take to?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's 4 to 6 months right now with a $250 deposit. You get your money back if at any point you want to bail out or don't like the car when you get a chance to drive one. It's no questions asked. They'll give you your money back, and it's just they're very easy to sell, which is great for the EV development. And I've had literally no, I'm not exaggerating, nobody's had any bad feedback. They all know they're getting into a smaller vehicle with a smaller range, but the smaller price tag to go with it. Oh, one other last point, heat pumps are an efficient way to heat a vehicle, and Mini's been using those since the get-go. So the Nissan Leaf makes you pay extra for that more efficient heat pump. So the efficiency and how the car drives is Mini's thing, not as much about other features like, I don't know, cooled seats or some of the things that people could easily live without. Mini's about investing in making the car fun and getting the most range. I've just been impressed with this brand for 13 years. That's why I continue to keep selling them. I just love them.
Somebody asked how much did they cost?
They start at 30 grand to start, and then they top out if you want a fully loaded version at 38 or 37. There's a link here at the top of like miniusa.com is the page where you can go to build one or click a reservation button if you wanted to throw $250 out there. If any of you felt inclined, do please let whoever reaches out to you know that you're trying to reach myself. I do. It is sort of a commission job, so.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the point of sale California incentive, the $1,500?
Yes. Yeah. So right off the bat, you'll get another $1,500 the day of purchase. Then you want to talk to your tax professionals about the state incentive of $2 grand, the federal incentive of $7,500, and then talk to your local energy providers for any incentives they might have to offer as well.
Wow. Any other questions?
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
So I have a friend who has a Bolt, and you know, he's asking me about charging and all this stuff, and he's had it for about 6 or 8 months now, and he had a hard time figuring out how to charge at the optimal time, right after midnight, before 6 a.m. And he ended up buying a charge adapter to help him with that. And I know all EVs typically have an interface that allows them to change the charge time. Question: how easy is it to manipulate that, on a Mini?
The Mini will let you specify when it's supposed to draw charge.
Mm-hmm.
Right in the settings menu, I show customers when they take delivery that you can tell it to charge immediately when plugged in, or wait till midnight or whenever the energy provider reduces their rates for you. So that they've got that built in. It's even able to precondition from an app on your phone. So you can program the car's nav, ventilate it, precondition the cabin with heat and air conditioning before you jump inside, as long as the car's plugged into a power outlet. So further getting more range out of the limited battery that they're selling here at 30, I think it's 32 kilowatts, 29 kilowatts usable. But you don't have to drain some of your range by heating or cooling the cabin when you jump into the car. You can do that ahead of time.
Thanks.
I should also note BMW and Mini has been about sustainability in their factories for decades. I've actually worked in a BMW factory. and they were touting as how much they care because Germany has a little more focus on well, emissions to begin with. The start-stop functions in gas vehicles originated in Europe, but they're big on sustainability and recycling the batteries that they use in their facilities. I'm proud to work for a manufacturer that really does care and is also caring about making money, of course, but they do really care about emissions and sustainability in their production.
Hey, Creed, this is Jim. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I wanted to congratulate you guys, or thank you, I should say. Your Volkswagen friends are not bringing in a nice sporty little handling car like this. They're only bringing in the SUV, the ID4, and you can only get the ID3 in Europe. So, you know, kudos to you guys for bringing in this little car.
Yeah, well, Mini's going to bring out a lot of other models, small vehicles with electric powertrains soon. So this is just the beginning.
It definitely hits that niche of, you know, we don't all need 300 miles of range. You know, a lot of people, you know, are city cars, and especially in big cities. So it sounds like a kind of perfect sweet spot for this car.
It was a pleasure to meet you all and be involved. Keep in touch if you need anything. I'm just a phone call away at Nilo Mini in Sacramento.
Okay. We got your email, so if anybody has questions, you can always shoot them
I
off.
fit right in. See, that's my bike I get to work in, guys. That's got a battery on it too. So it just so happens I could fit myself right into Davis, I'm pretty sure, as well as Sacramento.
There you go. Great.
Again, y'all.
Thanks, Creed. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for my time.
All right. So next, actually, Jim, did you want to do your hydrogen fueling?
I can do that. Yes.
Do we got time?
Yeah, it'll only be a couple of minutes, really. Let me see if I can share my screen. Hang on, stand by.
Sure. Well, thanks for getting Creed. That was interesting. I wasn't even aware of that even.
Yeah, I've been trying to get him for about a week, so I finally got through all the bureaucracy. So,
Jim, by the way, Jim, was he the Mini only, or is he all the broader BMW and such?
I believe he's Mini only.
Okay.
But you know, the two buildings are right next to each other. And so I was muted before, but I was saying that I was trying to get him for quite a while. And it just happened at the last minute that we got through all the bureaucracy at BMW. So I'm really happy you could do it. So. All right. Okay.
Oh,
All I wanted to share is just briefly, I happen to be driving around Sacramento, and I noticed that they were delivering hydrogen to a Shell station, and I'd never seen this before. So of course I jumped out and started taking pictures, and I just thought I'd share them with you. So, you know, most of us in this meeting get our energy delivered through the wires, through copper wires. In this case, the hydrogen comes in these big trucks, in these big boxes.
Square boxes, just like my wine.
Yeah. Here they're actually plugging into this little brick area where they are running the hydrogen from the truck into this some sort of a valve. And the interesting thing, I don't know if you can look on the ground here, but this little line, I think it's blue. I don't know if you can see it, but it's about a ½ an inch in diameter. It turns out that's the line that the hydrogen comes through. And I asked them why such a small line, and they said, you know, for safety, basically. You don't want to be, you know, putting a whole lot of hydrogen all at once into the system. And so it takes, I think, something like a good half an hour for them to load this box full of hydrogen into the station. There's another picture of it. And it was my understanding that each of these boxes, you can see there are 2 boxes here, each one is for one station. So they might have been headed off to another station after this one. There's, on the left here is the sort of the control screen that they need to open up before they, ooh, my internet's going funny. I hope you can still hear me. So here's the actual pump itself. Thought I'd take a picture of that. Looks a lot like a fast charger, but it's not. And so the coupler that goes into the car looks like this. I don't know if anybody's ever seen this before, but I'd never seen it before, so I thought I'd just take some pictures of it. For me, you can make up your own mind, but do we really want to bring our fuel in on big trucks? You know, it just doesn't, to me, it seems like going in the wrong direction, but that's my personal opinion, and you may have your own opinion about that.
Jim, we have a question for you. How much
Yes.
fuel is in a box?
I'm sorry?
How much fuel is in a box?
They said that they needed to refill about every 3 or 4 days. So, refill the station. So I'm sorry, I can't answer it more accurately than that. So, it's a good question. In other words, I should have asked, yeah, go ahead.
No, are these primarily for filling buses, and which vehicles use the hydrogen fuel?
I think these are for basic domestic type cars. They're not buses. I think buses have their own filling stations, but there are hydrogen cars out there, and some other people might be able to tell us, you know, who makes those hydrogen cars. I don't know.
Toyota has the Mirai, and Hyundai also has one.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, I just don't know if there were to be more hydrogen cars on the road, how often they'd have to be bringing these trucks into the station. It sounds like it'd have to happen quite often. So that's it. That was my show and tell.
So I wonder if they had, we could have a pipeline, but maybe you know, if they used old natural gas pipelines or something, but that probably has safety concerns too.
I can talk about putting hydrogen in the natural gas lines if you guys are curious. There's actually been some research on that, but the issue is that the hydrogen is just a small molecule. It's like the higher likelihood of it like literally leaking out. So you have to be a little bit careful with that. Like there's a little bit of a safety issue, but there's a certain percentage you can run the lines. It's actually a way that they're working on transferring hydrogen across the state, and there's a certain percentage that you put in the natural gas pipeline where it makes it like semi-okay, like the gas company get that, but they are like actively trying to figure out how to transfer hydrogen around because it's a hard molecule.
Yeah, Katrina, this is Peter. You can put 20, probably to maybe 30% in the pipelines without too much issue. The problem is that if it's a steel pipeline and you put too much hydrogen in it, then the hydrogen gets into the steel and embrittles it and can cause failure of the pipeline itself. So you can't just take a natural gas pipeline and say, okay, let's just put hydrogen in it. There's some things that have to be done first. But there's a lot of research in this area. There's pilots going on where gas utilities are putting certain percentages of hydrogen into the mix and testing and seeing how things work and whether the appliances have to be recalibrated or at what level they would have to be recalibrated. There's a lot of research in this area.
So Peter, I heard something about mixing it with ammonia or something, using ammonia as a vehicle as well. Have you heard about that?
I have not, but I have seen presentations where they use, because they're using basically solar and then making liquid fuels from that, and ammonia has been one of the byproducts as a fuel. But I don't know about ammonia. That's a nasty gas if it gets loose. So so there's there's issues with that too.
I'm curious to know if there's a requirement to odorize it. Certainly, if you had a lot of hydrogen in the air around you, that's potentially pretty dangerous. So, and I believe it's odorless. So
yeah, but I've heard that it's actually not that dangerous because it's so darn light. It gets loose and it's gone.
Oh,
and so unless you're in an enclosed space, then you have an issue. But if it's open air, it probably is no issue at all because it's just going to head straight up. I mean, it's what they use to float the dirigibles, right? So
well, yeah,
it's lighter than air.
You'd think it would mix with the oxygen in the air. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, then you'd get water.
Yeah.
And it would rain.
Might get a pretty big boom too. I'm not sure. It's hard to say.
But I don't think it's. I mean, if you because you can burn it. I mean, you can burn it and you get a flame just like you would from natural gas. And there's experiments with burning hydrogen in gas turbines instead of natural gas, which is actually kind of I wouldn't say brilliant idea, but it's a good idea from the perspective of there's no carbon emissions from that, but you still end up with other pollutants like NOx and things because it's high temperature and air is going in. But yeah, there's lots of work being done in this area.
That's it for me.
All right. Thanks, Jim.
You bet.
Okay. I think I'm next. And I tell you, I'm going to share my screen here. If I learn how to do that.
I had this quick question there for Jim. I was muted there for a second.
Right.
Do you know what kind of hydrogen that was? Was it green or blue or gray, or did they say it all?
Wow, you are way above my pay grade there, Guy. I don't know.
Okay, that says whether it's came from renewable source or whether it came from.
Oh, where did it come from?
Yeah. It's origin, right? Yeah.
Oh, my understanding is that it all comes from liquid. No, it comes from natural gas right now because that's the cheapest source of energy.
Now, there are a couple different types, and there are some requirements by the state of California on a certain percent. But
yeah, I don't know. I thought that for the vehicles that it had to be green, but maybe I'm wrong.
no, it was like 30%,
Oh, okay.
and it's varying over year. I don't know. It was something in that line. By the way,
I think it's 40% actually right now.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you. By the way, in our region, the broader Sacramento region has got about 350 fuel cell cars compared to 42,000 of the others. But okay,
So
on back to you, Richard.
I was just like Katrina put something in. Basically, it's saying also that hydrogen's probably used for heavy duty vehicles, and long range trucking probably would be really advantageous. So
I think for boats is a great application for it also.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Ocean going, yeah. Mm-hmm.
if it's light enough, does the boat kind of float over the ocean? No, oh, and then Katrina, you put in there 30% RPF. What's the RPF stand for?
RPF is Renewable Portfolio.
Okay.
I want to say I read it but my hydrogen knowledge is hit or miss.
Folks, yeah, I'd like to add that airplanes too, that the hydrogen can be a solution for airplanes. Now, I think that for getting back to just normal cars for most of us, I think we're all on the right track. Those of us driving electric vehicles. So I think I'm with Jim, Guy, and others, and Peter on this point here. It's very interesting to look at developments for hydrogen, but I think we're on the right track with EVs and direct use of renewables like solar. Just my 2 cents worth.
That's good. Yeah, I'm glad Guy brought up the origin of the hydrogen fuel too. You almost kind of forget. It's got to be either from a biogas source or some other breakdown.
Electrolysis, nuclear actually too.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
but there's the same issues with the electricity, right? It's not all green, so you got those issues too. But it's still a good valid point.
PG&E is like 80% or so is non-carbon, or 80 to 90% non-carbon.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move along, and let me share my screen here real quick. See if that works. Okay, I'm going to, and I'll do it. There we go. So just to let everybody know, I went down to the Chevy dealer a couple of weeks ago, actually about a week ago, and I noticed that, gee, the new Bolt EUVs, they had about 3 at the Davis dealership. And so I ran back home, grabbed my wife, who had a week off, and asked her to come with me, and we took a test drive in it. So I thought I'd do a little quick review. I'll have to tell you, I don't have professional slides here because, one, my wife wanted to get home, didn't want me to, put a video together. But I got a pretty good idea how the Bolt EUV handles. So if you, excuse me, if you notice from the picture too, it's a little more stretched out than the regular Bolt EV. In fact, it's about 6 inches longer. Wheelbase about 3 inches longer. And kind of go from the nice part about it, I think, for the Bolt was it starts at about $34,000. So it's about, and the Bolt EV is 32, so there's about a $5,000 takedown in price. Partly, I think Chevrolet is doing this because they don't qualify for the federal $7,500 rebate anymore. So they're really trying to push the price down. Like I said, is the length of it is about 6 inches longer. Most of that ends up in the back seat. The back seat was actually pretty big to begin with. So it's got this a little bit longer wheelbase, which handles the bumps in the road a little bit better. And it's got the nice part about it, it's got quite a new list of features in it. It's got a much bigger touchscreen info display that's about 10.2 inches. It still has the one pedal driving, and it's got a little regeneration. So it's got a lot of the same features the current one has. 0-60 is about 7 seconds. I think they said 7 seconds, maybe a little below. And the Bolt EV was 6.5. So, I never drove pedal to the metal on my Bolt EV with the sport feature on. I did it regularly once, and every time I did a lot of tire squealing, so it scared my passengers. I will tell you the range is about 249 miles. It's got a 58 kilowatt battery. It does DC fast charging standard, but it's still at 55 kilowatts. So, which is kind of a disappointment to some people, why they didn't try and, if you're going to this new technology, why isn't, up to 100, 150? Its onboard charger has been, it's up to 11 kilowatts from the old 7 kilowatt on the old one. And you can put a full charge in about 7 hours. The fast charge has about 95 miles in 30 minutes. And one of the things I liked is standard is this dual charging cord. So it has both level 1 and level 2. And I think I saw, in fact, on the demo I think we did in June too, or the factory tour. So basically it has an adapter you can put on it, and it senses whether you got a 120 line or 220 line. kind of going through, I'll go through the quickly, you know, through the slides of it. The front end, it looks, the features between the Bolt EUV and the Bolt EV are pretty similar. It's changed a little bit of some of the items on the steering wheel, like this area in here used to have kind of like a, you know, 4-way arrows and stuff to change, kind of change the what's not showing on the center display. And now it's kind of got this wheel that lets you kind of pull up and rotate through different items you want to have. In terms of how the display is what's gonna show on that center display besides speed and some of the other factors.
That scroll wheel click, I mean, did you press it in and it selects something? Is that what that scroll wheel will do? Up and
Yeah,
down?
so what you do is you click one of these arrows and you know what it does, it changes a bunch of things on, if you ever had the old Bolt, it's just how it fixes the display. And then you click, when you turn this, it clicks it up to the next screen and you kind of rotate the screens. And then if you click again on that little arrow, it goes to the, you know, oh, I want to look at my tire pressure, and do that and click through it. So I don't use that much on mine, just because it's actually because I always jump in the car and driving someplace. I always think about it after I'm on the road. It does have over here in the back is the regen paddle. So I think the current Bolt is like it's behind this spoke here, and now it's up here. One of the things I had when I used it, I think you can adjust the regen and how much that probably through some of the features in here. But I didn't get that far with it when I was test driving, because when I tried it, the regen wasn't as powerful as the one on my current Bolt. But I think it just hadn't been adjusted and how it had been set. And on this guy too, it has the adaptive cruise control, which is now is put on. I think that's actually, I don't think that's standard. I think you have to add that on. And so pretty much the nice part about it is the material in the current Bolt is pretty plasticky. This stuff's still plasticky. It's still plastic, but they've actually made it look like it's almost kind of a leather-like soft material. So it actually looks like a much better interior and much better quality. But I'm pretty sure I've used that to keep the price down. And the spoke is a little bit different too, the steering wheel spoke itself. They've changed how they, instead of having in here, where they had like the shifter knob like you'd find on a regular car, they have buttons now. So you push, you go into park. If you want to go into reverse, you got to pull back on it. And it takes a little getting used to. And neutral, I guess you just push it down. Drive, you got to pull back. And I think they do that so you don't accidentally push the the reverse button while you're going forward and reaching for something. So both drive and reverse take a little focus in what you're doing, so you don't accidentally push the wrong direction. This button here actually is the one pedal driving. And if you know the current Bolt, you basically have the little handle for gear shift lever, gear shift lever in the middle of your console there. And so the car, when you turn it on, defaults to drive, and then you have to touch it again to go into low. And I guess a lot of people complained about that. I actually didn't have that much of a problem with it. But so now if you go and you set the one pedal driving by pushing this, it starts up. It's always in one pedal. Some of the other things is right in here is this big kind of cavernous compartment. It actually has wireless charging if you put your cell phone in there. Now, I didn't find out, but the salesperson there told me that, beware, don't put your coins in. You might affect it or something else that might be affected by a magnetic charge. And I thought that could be a little worrisome that, you have somebody that throws things in there, throws their camera in or something like that. And then on here, you have some of your safety controls here. This actually is the lane control, the sport mode, and that's the traction control. And then a little bit different from the current Bolt too is the cup holders are all backwards at that. And you can tell from here too, ventilated seats. That's an extra too, but that's pretty nice. And nice ventilated seats. And this was actually wasn't the Premier. This is actually the LT model, the lower price model as well. They changed the electronics a bit. And so everything is really kind of a push button on here, and you have some on the screen as well. I have to admit, I like the Bolt as it is because it had the radio controls off in here, and they had little push buttons. And that, you know, I frankly listen to the radio or listen to, you know, my Sirius XM the same way I did when back in 1969. You know, I keep pushing buttons and stuff. I like about that, I can keep my hand on those things without taking my eyes off the road. So hopefully that works as nicely. And the big bonus is the back seat. The back seat, actually, the seats were pulled back a good distance, and there's still, I mean, there's an amazing amount of room in the back seat. And the seats were very comfortable as well. The one thing that we did in this test drive, and I'll talk about that in a minute, was, so one of the problems in the previous Bolt that people complained about were the seating, both the front seats and a little bit about the back seats, most of the front seats. And so they've changed the front seats. They're a lot more comfortable. I actually didn't have that much problem with the old one, but they are more comfortable. And you can actually, in one of the upgrades, you can get a powered driver's seat. That's kind of nice. The other thing is when we took the test drive, and I actually sat in the back and let my wife drive. And I sat and I told her, hit every manhole cover and every pothole you can find. Because, you know, with my Bolt now, actually, I'll drive it, especially when I'm going to some family gathering and I've got my daughter in the back seat. You know, you go over one of those potholes or manhole cover, especially ones in Davis. I mean, the people in the back seat, you know, they better be strapped down or they're bouncing off the ceiling of the car. But I actually went over that. It actually absorbed the shock pretty well. It was pretty nice. So the good thing is safety equipment. A lot of the stuff's all standard now. Automatic emergency braking, lane assist, and automatic high beams are all standard. And then the others that I have in italics are blind spot detectors, adaptive cruise control, rear cross traffic alert. There's 360-degree camera systems. I know they probably have those in the Teslas, but it's pretty impressive to see that. Those guys, those options there, they're pretty cheap to add on. If you've got the regular one, they're somewhere in the $495 to $800 range to add that on to the car. So that's pretty nice. Now, if you get, yeah.
Question for you. What was the question?
So on the older Bolt models, the lane keep assist is not very good. Did you guys get a chance to test it out on the newer version, see if it improved at all?
I didn't. I took it on the freeway, but I actually didn't turn that on. So that would be interesting to find out if it works better. So
cool.
Yeah, I try to use as much. I used the adaptive cruise control, and it worked really well. That was nice. So the last bullet there is optional Super Cruise, and that's GM's hands-free highway driving system, where they've got about, I forget how many miles of freeway, and you can only be used on areas where they've had some kind of GPS and some kind of freeway drawings, freeway mapping system. You can only get that on the Premier model, which starts at about 34,000, but by the time you add that on, I think you're pretty much in the 38,000. So anyway, kind of my conclusions were that, you know, the ride was a lot more comfortable than the Bolt EV. The seats were more comfortable, and you had some options of the driver's power seat. The back seat was really roomy, so if you're taking more than just one or two people, then I think they'd appreciate that. The safety equipment, a lot of it was standard, and then adding on some of the more safety features was relatively cheap to add on. I found the handling to be really crisp, kind of like probably not as good as the Bolt EV, which I've really taken around corners pretty good, but still with that battery and low center of gravity, I can really handle it. It seems to handle pretty well. Acceleration was still pretty speedy, and I didn't floor it. I have my wife in the car, and I think she's afraid of me driving, but anyway, and then the price is really low, and that's even before rebates. So, you know, if this bill gets through Congress and we get that $7,500 rebate as well as the state rebates and some others, I mean, it really would lower the price down. It would make these extremely affordable. The one thing I put in the back was it has, even though it's longer, it actually has less cargo room in the trunk area. It's actually a little bit smaller. And of course, the other thing is they have this kind of like false floor and you can take that out. But when they open the back, you go, wow, that's a little smaller than the Bolt is. So when you flip the seats down, it's actually about the same because they made the back seat bigger. So you end up with the seats down, you can put a lot more, you can put about the same amount of cargo in as you could with the regular Bolt. But with it up, it just looked a little bit smaller, kind of. So actually, there's a picture of it. I think this is with the false floor. I think the false floor goes right in here, actually on top of there. So it, so when I looked at it, the false floor was in, so it was covered up to here. I was like, wow, doesn't look that deep. But overall, it was a pretty nice handling car. And I think that's all I got. And get out of there. Okay. Any questions? I say the nice thing is,
can I chime in here?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to just mention some other people have mentioned that the Bolt, that there's problems with the off-peak charging, and I just want to confirm, because I've set this off-peak charging for many of these vehicles, and you can definitely do it. And just one additional nice factor compared to some of the older EVs is that the off-peak charging is GPS based. In other words, you set the off-peak charging for your home to take advantage of those off-peak rates. But then when you go to a public station, it knows immediately that it's not at home. So it just does immediate charging. So I just want to let you know that these vehicles do have that available also.
Okay. Thanks. It's great to know. I've actually heard about that and seen it, but I've never tried it. Okay.
I'm curious, maybe Sandra and others can share an update on the Bolts with General Motors and their situation.
Sure, I can just share briefly. So I have many of you probably heard about the recalls that are happening. There was another one that recently happened 2 weeks ago where they said that the 2017 to 2019 Bolt EVs cannot, their charge levels cannot go below 70 miles for the battery, and they cannot go above 90%, which is around the 200 or so range for the upper levels. And so some people have been reaching out to GM for a buyback or something of the sort, according to California's lemon laws. And so I personally reached out to GM to ask for to see what was possible. And they initially offered me a buyback that would result, I paid $37,000 for my car. The buyback would result in about a $30,000 buyback because they take the worth of your car and then subtract the sort of mileage wear and tear that you've caused. And so that brought my car down to $30,000. And so some people are doing a buyback where they get cash and then they could go outside of GM to purchase a electric vehicle or whatever they like. Some people are looking at doing a trade-in where they get the like $30,000 worth towards a different GM electric vehicle or car. And then what I'm also recently reached out to them to ask was for an MSRP swap. In that I would get another car that was also like they would trade in my car for one that is worth $37,000 also. And so I'm exploring those options, seeing what they say. And then I know, Richard, you are even asking for just a battery swap if it's going to come out soon. Is that right?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Richard.
Oh, sorry. It's the other Richard. So we were looking into that as well.
Oh, yeah. Two Richards.
Sorry.
Mr. Hart, you want to go?
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna say we were looking into potentially either a battery or replacement, but I think we were discussing at the beginning in the meeting that our Bolt has 120,000 miles on it, so I don't know what kind of value we're getting. So if they could just replace the battery, that'd be great, but I don't know. We'll see.
So I'll admit, I actually, I don't know how Sandra's done, but my trying to contact the lady who's my handler, I guess. It was good the first week, and then I kind of let a couple days go by, and then I've just been leaving her phone messages and not getting calls back. But I had the question of, hey, is there a plan to really basically swap out the whole battery pack? Because frankly, I just finished paying off the car. Last thing I'm gonna do is have to take another loan out. And if they did something like that, you basically got a heck, brand new car, brand new battery. It'd be pretty nice. And I hate to find that out 2 months from now. You end up, they buy out your car through the lemon law, and then you've now got another loan to pay off. So now I think we have to just keep pushing on. So
does anyone know if there's a fix in the works for this?
They told me the fix was they had to repair several battery modules on the battery. Okay. This was like about 2-3 weeks ago. But don't go to the dealership because they know nothing of the dealership. I even told them when I contacted them there, they actually had me come in and I said, "Are you sure this is it? I've heard you don't have a fix yet." "Oh no, we got it." So I think they did the software update again, which had already been done. So that's when I contacted. But I other than that, I think that's almost more of a rumor, this idea of fixing the battery modules. I just don't think they know yet. So I think they're in kind of a hard place because the last thing you want to do is roll out new 2022 models and people hear, "Oh, there's a Bolt recall and the cars are going to explode in your garage." So that's one of the warnings why they told people, don't charge overnight. You charge it up in daylight. As soon as it's done charging, you can only charge to 90%, which is about 190 miles, and then immediately pull it out of the garage and put it on the street. So it gave you the feeling, actually it gave you the uncomfortable feeling of, I got this great EV, but at the risk of maybe blowing up and burning my house down. So.
And to be clear though, this is just the 2017 to 2019 models. The 2020 and beyond models haven't shown any issues and there haven't been any recalls on them. So if anybody out there is looking at a Bolt, it's still a fantastic car. Just buy one of the later models so that you don't have to deal with this issue.
Sandra, what I've heard. Well, let me second that, what Sandra just mentioned. Again, it's the 2017 to 2019 models. Let's just see what develops there. But beyond that, I've most recently helped somebody with a 2021, for example, and that one, after about a year, seems to be doing just great. And then say that is being charged overnight in the garage, staying there, and so on. Yes. I don't think we need to overreact, but let's definitely keep our eye on what's happening to these 2017s, 2019s.
Right. I think they changed battery suppliers starting with the 2020s.
Right. Yeah, that's what I heard too, that the battery manufacturing for LG Chem was done in the States, the ones that are in the 2017 through almost the end of 2019. I think there are some 2019s like in November, December that shipped that had the batteries from the LG Chem in the United States and Michigan. And those batteries are all okay. So everything that's built in the US is fine.
And that's correct. I
second that. I second that. Yes, they're definitely working on it quite a bit and improving.
So it's the last half of the 2019 models that are okay too. So it's only that first quarter, I guess the very end of 2018 it came out. So
at least you go thinking that it's only electric cars that might start burning on their own in your garage. That's not true. Victoria had a gas car parked in the garage and started burning while she was asleep. And we're only lucky the neighbor happened to see it and called the fire department. They broke in and into the garage and to try to put the fire out. It was just going into the main house at that point.
Yeah. So. Gas cars burn so often it's not even news. I mean.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
yeah, and I love my Bolt too. I mean, it's just been a blast to drive. In fact, you know, last year in 2020 during our kind of lockdown period, I actually volunteered to go out, you know, to go get stuff and do, just because one, I just love driving the car, and two, it had the best radio or best stereo in the house. So yeah, hey, I'll go, let me go. So I love the car. I've had a great.
So Rich, if you'd like, I can start trying to keep within the, what, we have 9 minutes left on EV infrastructure update.
Sure, go ahead.
And let me go ahead and share a screen. There we go. You guys can see that, I assume? We're good?
Good.
All right, just want to do a quick update for our region, where we are with respect to EV chargers, and also give a little perspective on how far we've come. If you, I don't know how many of you were involved, but when the electric cars first came out, and we started seeing all these level 2 charges around the region, and we were so ecstatic that you can get charging almost everywhere. I mean, look at all these level 2 charges. I mean, there are no fast charges. They didn't exist, and they're probably almost in the state. But look at how many electric car chargers we have for level 2. Well, luckily, we've moved a little bit beyond that. In 2014, we were excited. We saw there were, count them, like 6, 7 DC fast chargers in our region, 8. I mean, some of those sites had only 1 fast charger, but hey, you could do it. You could swing by Sacramento Nissan and plug in, or one of the others, and you could actually do it. It worked. It was viable. Well, now let's go forward to where we're a little closer to where we are today, a couple of years later, and look, they're blossoming. They're coming out, and this starts becoming real. And today, where we're at, look at this. These are just DC fast chargers. We have some, they showed like 90 locations, 100 locations. And of course, many of the locations have several fast chargers. So charging infrastructure in our area has certainly gotten so much better. And this is information I'd like to be able to pass on to others that are thinking about this, because by the way, some of the state incentives may be disappearing pretty quick, or becoming much more restrictive. So encourage people, they're on the fence and they're looking at using the state CVRP incentive. They should be moving on it pretty quick. Take my advice on that one. It's just another way of showing the same thing, except also put fuel cell hydrogen refueling stations. We've got 4, count them, 4 in the region. So that's a start. Now, Sacramento also is led with curbside fast charging. So it's the one they did about a year or so ago in Southside Park. EVgo says that that's the most heavily used charging plaza that EVgo has, I believe, in the United States. Both number of actual sessions and the number of unique chargers or unique cars for every month. And there's 2 more that are going in down in Sacramento, 2 more curbside. The other thing is, this is, I don't know how many people, it's kind of didn't get a lot of press, but Caltrans has been putting fast chargers at the rest stops. And the inhibitor before for putting fast chargers at rest stops is that there's federal law that says you cannot charge for service or goods at any rest stop. So there was no interest in trying to provide that. So Caltrans went ahead and put those fast chargers in, and they're free because of that. Now, laws may change over the next year or 2 to allow fees for that fast charging, but right now, if you see those on the rest stops, they're free. Electrify America, it's so wonderful. A lot of those fast chargers that we saw in the earlier maps were things that they put in as part of their settlement decree. They've got coming to the 3rd of 4 rounds. They're in the middle of finalizing the plans and that, and these are adding along the routes three areas of holes that they think are on the major corridors. The one probably most interesting to us is going north. So they want to look at strengthening that route with respect to EV fast chargers. And there's some metro areas. If you see the light blue and the dark blue were previous rounds of the $200 million that Electrify America, which is part of, again, the VW settlement that they put in prior years or are finishing up now. The light green, oh gosh, that's sort of a doctor office green. Those are where they're focusing on the next round. So again, most interest to us is in Stockton to try to strengthen up what's going on in Stockton. Then they are as well, and there's a number of manufacturers getting behind plug and charge. And this is essentially taking what Tesla owners have had as a given for let's see, 7 years now. That you just drive up, plug in, and do nothing else, and it starts charging your car. Right now, I believe the Mustang Mach-E does, and I believe one of the some of the Mercedes that are getting ready to come out, they will be, or have just come out, will be able to sign up for this. But it'll take a while for all the cars to roll and adopt to this new charging standard. But that'll be one to, as a Tesla driver myself, it's so nice not to be, trying to find some way to turn the charger on and fool around with the credit cards or the fobs, or just drive up, plug in, and it starts filling you up, and you get billed centrally. So that's in the works. And another big news item, and I don't know how many of you heard this, but Tesla is going to be opening up all their fast chargers to non-Teslas. They didn't say exactly how soon, but the implication was relatively soon enough to talk about it at their quarterly financial review. And they didn't say what the fee was going to be at, but there are 16 plazas in our region, and those will be able to be look like, as they described it, will probably be able to be utilized by any electric car that's got a CCS port, fast charge port. So that'll be an interesting thing. Now, some of the current charging manufacturers, they charge a premium. If you want to charge fast, you're going to pay a higher kilowatt hour fee than if you're charging slower. In the sense that there's a greater value in charging fast, and also may take harder to pull in that, bigger risk of hitting pricing issues on the grid. But as Elon had described it, they may be doing the opposite. If you're charging slow, they're going to charge you a higher per kilowatt hour fee. And the rationale behind that is that you're utilizing one of their charging spaces for a longer period of time. They want you to get in, charge, and get out. So it'll be interesting to see how that ties in. And I think that's the end of my update. I kind of rushed through this. I hope it was still coherent. Any questions?
How would you access the Tesla network if you had a CCS port? Would you have an adapter to their supercharger?
Yeah, there'll be two parts to it. As best I understand is one is a physical adapter. The second part is you'd have to have a Tesla account, where you put your credit card and information and how you identify your vehicle. And those two items is what I understand is they're planning to do. So that's our best guess at the time. There wasn't a lot of detail. A lot of it was some speculation, but he was fairly clear at the quarterly review.
I did hear somebody tweet, I don't know if it was Elon or somebody, said that by the end of 2021, and yeah, those CCS to Tesla adapters aren't cheap. So if you got to buy one of those, you got to really want to use this thing. And the last thing that I heard too is that it's not going to be automated like it is with Teslas, where you just plug in and go. You use the Tesla app, you'll punch in which stall you're in.
That's right.
And then it'll enable it to the CCS adapter, and then you can go and then it'll charge you.
You're right, Paul. I heard that as well. I'd forgotten about that. Thank you.
Hello, Guy. Hey, Guy, thanks very much for this great update on DC fast charging. And I had the same question as Richard, so you've answered my question. Now, what I hope we can all do, what we can advocate for, is the interoperability between these networks, these DC fast charging networks. You have Electrify America, you have ChargePoint, and now Tesla. I mean, this is huge to have Tesla ideally be integrated with the others. But I hope we can advocate for interoperability also. And I actually have found that I can already access with my ChargePoint card like Electrify America and EVgo. But I hope we can keep on that track and make it as simple as possible for those who need DC fast charging.
Agreed. And I think one of the reasons, again, to repeat what I said at the beginning, one of the reasons I'm sharing this information is I'd like you to be able to turn around and talk to help alleviate range anxiety for those EV curious or those folks who are on the fence and saying, well, I don't know if I don't see any charging stations, or I don't know, I don't want to get stranded somewhere. So please help with this as a basis. Please encourage them to move forward, and that it'll be a decision they're likely be happy with.
And I would say that is a perfect transition. We are at about the end of the meeting, but I know we have several new participants and EV curious folks in the meeting that probably have questions about charging in general, or about purchasing an electric vehicle, their worries about range anxiety and whatnot. So if you don't mind, I'm going to put your email in the chat, guys, so that people can ask further questions of you. But I'd like to open the floor to anybody that has a question, anything simple, complex, whatever it may be. We have, as you've seen, many, many different experts on EVs in the meeting today that are here to answer your questions and hopefully tamp down some of any EV fears you might have.
I have a question.
Go for it, Amanda.
So we're EV curious, considering getting an EV sometime in the next year or two, maybe. And actually, I have two questions. So first is, if we get a used EV, anybody got any advice about how we could find a used EV that would come with a warranty for the battery? So through some kind of dealership like CarMax or whatever that would offer a warranty in case the battery's life got used up after we bought the car. Second question is, does anyone have any information about EMFs and electric cars? I've heard that they produce a lot more EMFs than regular cars.
Said BMX or BMS, battery management system, or a motorcycle, or what?
The EMF.
EMF.
I think she means
electromagnetic fields.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the answer is that it's probably trivial, because the batteries are DC, so there's no real EMF from that. And then you've got the EMF from the motor itself, but that's typically far from the passenger compartment. You're gonna be exposed to way more EMF in your house than you're gonna get from your car. I can pretty much guarantee you that.
Okay.
I'll chime in on the warranty, if I may. The warranties these days are very long. I don't know, what are they, 10 years now, 100 and some odd thousand miles. You'd probably be well advised to buy one that's still within that warranty period. Otherwise, there is some risk. But the level of confidence that the manufacturers are showing in their batteries is very inspiring. I must say, they're offering much longer warranties on the batteries than they ever offered on their engines and transmissions, for example.
I'd say look for a car too that has a liquid cooled battery charging system too.
Good. Yes.
The failures have been in cars that had air cooled, especially operated in hot climate areas like Phoenix. I guess had problems, but otherwise, the liquid cooled ones have held up pretty well.
Right.
Yeah, and to be clear, the air cooled ones that people might primarily think about are the Nissan Leafs, and we have one of the old Nissan Leafs, and we still like it. Now, if you look at a used car, the further back you go, the cheaper they are, of course. But it's not just the reduction in the range of the battery over time. It's also that the technology that they had back in 2014, 2013, 15, it was the older technology just didn't provide the range that you see today. So it's important if you can get a great deal on an electric car, but it's important that that car has the range that you need by at least 50% above your requirements, at least. I generally recommend 100%. So it's kind of hard to figure that out with some of the cars and what it is, but at a minimum, you should be able to have them at least fully charge it up and see at least what the battery says. That's the new requirements by CARB for the next round of their clean air requirements are going to have built in ways to find the battery's state of health. But that's in general, because the fewer number of moving parts, the reliability is going to be very, very high as long as the range meets your needs.
And when it comes to the range, remember to think about it in what your daily or weekly needs are, rather than, okay, once a year I take a trip down to Southern California, or once a year I do XYZ. It's good to think about what your daily need is, so that you can, so if you're only driving around town locally or something, and you're maybe 50 miles round trip every 2 to 3 days, then you don't necessarily need a 300-mile battery. But so just keep that in mind too.
It's also good to think about whether you're doing city or highway driving, because I have a 2012 iMeets that I bought used in 2013, so I've had it for about 8 years now. That car has a high coefficient of drag, but if I drive around the city, it only has a 16 kilowatt battery. If I drive around the city, I'll get 80 to 90 miles on it, but if I take it on the highway, I'll get 30 to 40 max. So there's definitely a big difference between highway and city driving. So something to kind of keep in mind as well. If you have a daily commute that's mostly city driving, you're probably going to get more range than stated.
Yeah. Well, Richard, if you drive 100 miles an hour, of course, you're only going to get 30 miles.
Well, I love my driving.
It's backwards from what people are used to. With gas cars, you're used to longer range with highway driving and shorter range in the city. With electric cars, it's opposite. Your best range is in the city. So
right.
And that's one other thing. If we go back to battery cooling, I guess what I would say is it's not so much air versus water or liquid. It's more active versus passive. I'm not sure if there is any vehicles out there with active air cooling, but those should be just as effective as liquid cooled. It's the passive cooling, which is the Nissan Leaf, as mentioned earlier, that has problems. So that's the thing to look for, rather than what the fluid is that cools the battery.
Again, another thought for a first-time EVer is to consider a plug-in hybrid, a Volt or a Pacifica hybrid, for example. If you keep those charged up, you're going to probably get almost everything you need to do every day done on electricity. But you do have the reassurance of that gasoline motor sitting there under the hood in case you run down your battery. It's kind of a nice, I guess people call it the gateway drug to EV. You get the performance of an EV plus the assurance that you're sitting, you've got the gas sitting there if you need it. It's a nice way to get started.
So I was going to say something to Amanda too. You might want to look at leasing, because I think when I actually found out that the Bolt EUVs were actually already starting to fill up in the Chevy dealerships, the Bay Area had some, I think it was $139 a month leases for a Bolt, and I think the Bolt EUV was close to that too as well. So that was actually I almost started thinking, maybe I just want to lease it like that. In 3 years, then you know what the next generation is. But So anyway, that's something to look at. And I'd add also too, if you've got other questions after we're done here, feel free to use that DEVA@cooldavis.org, and we'll always follow up on your questions. So.
I see Johannes has a question.
It's not a question. It's just a huge thank you to your group. I'm on the board of Cool Davis, and this is my first time I really hung out for the whole session. I'm overwhelmed, and this is fabulous information that I think is incredibly valuable to our local citizens and throughout our region. I just want to commend you for the incredible commitment you've made to learning about EVs and sharing information. And I literally don't know what to say other than a huge thank you. This is pretty amazing. And I'm hoping that, wondering if you've created any sheet that could be helpful, like we have, you know, the Cool Homes checklist. Is there such a thing as the EV checklist that you could design and make available for people wanting to educate themselves more about key features? Like you each mentioned something like you want to get this and not this, you want to look at this. Have you done anything like that? Excuse my ignorance on not knowing if you have, but is there something like that available, or would somebody be willing to create something? Do we need something like that?
Consumers Reports has something, but I haven't seen a nice checklist like that.
I think there's probably one at Plug in America, I think has this.
Right, and I guess I would add that we have a number of resources from Plug in America. We have a Cool Davis FAQs that's on the website for frequently asked questions. And there's a number of resources on our resource list that's available that with links to all kinds of sources for people that are looking at EVs, including used vehicles.
You know, I hear that, and I just want to add the fact that what I think helps people, if I have to go to 50 clicks, you know the old story, you have to go to 50 clicks, you may or may not follow it, but if I have something I can start with, it really helps me charge my engine up. It gets me the electricity I need to go on to the next station. So I just throw it out for consideration because I don't own an EV right now. I have a Prius, which is a step, but a long way away from what you're talking about. And looking forward, thanks to this conversation, to making changes probably within the next 2 years. So thank you for not only for what you've done for Cool Davis, but for me personally, and stimulating my curiosity and interest in moving forward with it with an EV. So thank you.
So I've just put the link to the Cool Davis planning guide for buying an EV in the chat.
Thanks.
And I'm just putting in the one from Plug in America. It's a kind of a guide summarizing all the different EVs, their ranges and prices, and some of the charging capabilities that you might look for. Now that means, Sandy, you have to stay online for a while where people can still pull off this, you know, copy down all the chat.
I just hit the button that says save the chat.
And we'll send out a summary as well. Were there any other initial immediate questions that people wanted answered?
Any new owners, or probably any other EV curious?
I had a question about the access decals and what the future of those are going to be, because we use 2 volts for commute to or travel to the Bay Area with one person because they're working in the Bay Area. So that's a question I have. Second question I have has to do with, I was driving in San Ramon on the toll roads that they are putting in place. And will there be any reduced cost on those toll roads for EV owners or drivers?
So you're referring to the HOV lane stickers.
Correct.
They're good for 3 years plus I believe it's 3 years plus the year that you apply for it. Doesn't matter when you bought the car. So the first application for the sticker. So don't ever apply for it in December. Wait till January, so you get that year plus I think it's 3 more. And then also on some of the bridges and the toll bridges and such, I believe it does give you some either some reduced or free access. Does anybody know the latest on that?
I'll just say this is about 2-year-old information. I was in the Bay Area on 680. That gave me reduced fees in that the toll lane they had at certain parts, and I didn't use it at the time, but it would have given me a reduced charge.
Yeah, this is Peter. I think it's reduced. I don't think it's free anymore. It used to be free, but I don't think it is.
For the bridges or
The bridges and the toll lanes,
Toll
like
lanes, right.
the one in 680, I think that's reduced. I don't think it's free.
Yeah.
And the easiest thing to do, of course, you probably already know that if you're driving to the Bay Area all the time, is get the fast track, the little transponder, and put it in your car. Then you don't have to deal with paying tolls.
Oh, yeah, right. We do that.
Any other questions?
On one of the biggest benefits is that the savings in the fuel. You'll have dramatic savings in the cost of driving.
That's for certain. And you reduce your exposure to all those toxic fumes coming out of the gas stations and the pumps. So the only thing I'd add is, depending on how we do with our 2017, early 2019 bolts, maybe those people here are owners of them. We should get together and find a nice Bay Area dealer and like order 10 at one time. So what kind of price break we can get.
Richard, I was wondering whether we might ask some questions of our current owners who in the past have participated in our ride and drive events. And we're in this very strange moment where thinking about having public events again and doing community education and, kind of getting a sense of what people's feelings are about doing that kind of work again. We've had a pop-up at the farmers market in Davis, and we've had ride and drive events every year in September during Drive Electric Week. And we're kind of looking for some feedback from folks about what they would feel comfortable with doing, and when as they look out into the next 6, 8, 9 months to a year, what they might be hoping we might be able to do.
Well, I mean, this is Peter. I'll go first. I do pretty much anything. I've been vaccinated. I'm not worried anymore. So, I'm willing to do anything we did before. But I'm sure not everybody feels the same as me. But
I'd like to get that question sort of answered both for showcase where you're talking about an EV around it, and the ride and drive where you're in the car with some strangers. If the answer is the same on both for folks as they answer this question.
Yeah, for me it is, but others may be different. Yep.
So one would be the show and tell. And I think I'd be pretty happy or pretty comfortable. Let's put it that way. Pretty comfortable with a show and tell. Basically, I was talking about my car with a hood up, and you could let people look inside. I don't know if I'd be that comfortable with having people ride around with me right now. But,
yeah.
Doing ride-arounds has been not something that we really have done a lot of in recent years. It's certainly in, sort of more public event kind of situations, but typically our show and tells have included allowing people to get in the cars and push, look at things. And so I think that is another level of comfort that people have to have.
Others? We're asking the same question on the national basis, so I'd love to hear your answers.
On.
I would be happy to do show and tell and have people sit in my car, but I don't know about the driving around together in a car totally.
Just roll the windows down.
Rolling the windows down is an option, he says.
Not now, though. It's too hot. 100.
Yeah, way too hot right now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I should think manufacturers and dealers would be more amenable and prepared to offer vehicles for, test rides and test drives and that kind of stuff. I think could look to them instead of to individual owners sacrificing their cars and potentially their health.
Right, and that's for many years now, we've been discouraged in actually doing personal driving at public events that are covered by the nonprofit statuses of organizations, because there's liability insurance involved there. And so I think we really are talking about a show and tell that just includes having people in your car, but not driving. And if we were to have a ride and drive, it would be back to trying to encourage the dealers to join us for an event like that.
And I will say, when we took our test drive of the Bolt EUV, we talked to the sales manager with a mask on, and sales manager had to have her mask on. And then she handed us the keys, and we got in it. We did. I just put the windows down, drove out of the place, and about 500 yards down the place, felt okay. I'm feeling pretty good. Took the mask off, and I felt pretty comfortable with that. He basically aired out if anybody would be sleeping in the car, but then I did the whole thing and aired out the car, and I didn't have any problem with that. And even took a little hand sanitizer and just put that on afterwards. So, and that, I didn't have no concerns. I had no concerns at all.
The last few months, I have to say, I've test driven several cars from dealers, and uniformly, I was just given the key or the fob, whatever it is, and said, go have fun, enjoy yourself. See you soon. That included a Mustang Mach-E, a Bolt EV, a couple of Teslas, and overall, it just seemed to be the policy. Okay, we're no longer going to go with the customer for a test drive. We're gonna just give them the key and let them go.
Yeah, I mean, this is Peter. It's kind of, I had a similar experience, but it wasn't 100%. So the Tesla, the Volvo, the Volkswagen, you got to drive, by yourself, but the Toyota dealer, they rode along in the back seat. So it just depends on the dealer, I think.
Was the Toyota, was the RAV4 hybrid?
Yeah, RAV4 Prime.
Prime.
My daughter recently bought a RAV4 Prime, which I went with her to shop for. And again, the dealer simply gave us the key fob and suggested a route that we did follow, but they didn't come with us. And she bought the car and she loves it. It's a great car.
Any more comments or questions?
Well, this has been great. Very active discussion. I've been super appreciative of hearing everybody's comments and questions. Thank you so much.
I'm really glad how many people we got to. I was a little concerned, people would all be on vacation. So
yeah.
Thanks for everybody for joining. Katrina.
Oh, Katrina's so bright.
Yeah.
Oh, hey guys. Sorry, the camera is apparently up. I don't know. This is like where
You got to turn those Hollywood spotlights off.
I'm just too cool. I've got to like hide myself. Gotta be too
right.
Yeah, this is cool. I like this one. You guys want to see my cat? He's sleeping. Not the car, but he's close enough.
Okay. Anything else to add, Sandra or Chris?
Nope, we will send out a recording of the video as well as some of the notes from the chat for everybody to review and to share with their friends. But we hope that we will see you at the next meeting, you and your pets if you want to bring them in. But we hope you guys have a great rest of your evening.